All right. So we're looking at a video by a guy called Infinite. Me? No. For those that don't know, one of my other online usernames is, of course, Infinite Retro. And we're going to check out his video. This is titled Real Talk, No More Mortal Kombat 1 Support, ? Who's to blame? So let's jump in. I've never heard of this guy before. It just popped up on my recommended. I don't know if anyone shared it in the Discord, but if you did, shout out to them. Please let me know. And let's jump straight on in.
All right, guys. Today we're going to do something a little different. We got to do a little bit of real talk right now because Mortal Kombat has just released their definitive edition. And the general population is in uproar because this pretty much marks the end of anything that could be considered new DLC, new season, season 3, anything of that nature.
So this was 11 days ago. So some of these creators that I've been covering put out their videos, and then after the fact, they actually announced officially that it was all over. But basically, yeah, like the definitive edition was. Yeah, it was declaring that early, but then they confirmed it.
This is pretty much all we got, and that's all, folks, because this is what we're gonna get, and this is all we're gonna get. I don't know how I feel about it because I do know how I feel about it. It sucks. It actually sucks because as much as the complaints that I had about the game, I still had fun playing the game. There was a lot of hiccups, a lot of issues, and a lot of things that could have been fixed or added, but I saw the potential. There's so much potential, and I hate that. I hate that when you have a game that has so much potential. Resident Evil Reverse, Umbrella Corps.
So, I actually really hoped that those two games. Now, I haven't gone back to Reverse. The last time I played it, which was, oh my god, I think it was last year, there were people playing still. Umbrella Corps, I don't think I've found a match outside of initial launch, right? Which is a real shame because I thought, and I know what he's saying here too. So I may not agree in terms of like the potential of MK1 just because of the myriad of reasons that I have issues, everything from gameplay to character design, world design, storytelling, stage design, all that sort of stuff, right? The stages look good, but there's nothing to them, right? They're just postcards. But I understand what he's saying here when you see something that's got potential and it's just pissed away.
Best games. But when you have games like Mortal Kombat 1 that have so much potential, you know where it could have gone if it just had a little bit more TLC, if it had a little bit more funding and time to be worked on. This is the third iteration of Mortal Kombat, and they couldn't even make decent lobbies. Like, obviously there's stuff that was missing in this game, and there's obvious that they didn't have time to actually put it together the way they wanted to, and it was clear from like day one, even not even day one, like the beta. It was clear from the beta that the stuff in this game was slightly rushed. And we knew something was wrong off the jump. But we stuck with it because why? It was a fun game. It was a decent fun game. And I liked it for what it was, but at the end of the day, there was issues obviously happening in the background, and none of us knew what the outcome was going to be. Except for that, like, one tweet.
I was just, because I wanted to check I'm just having a look at his YouTube channel. I'll post a link in the video for you guys to go check out. Please go check out Infinite. And so obviously, like, it covers like fighting game stuff, but other things in here as well, which is like pretty groovy too, which is nice. So it's like he's got a pretty good mix in here, man. This is cool. This is pretty cool, man.
A while ago that pretty much said that yeah, this whole entire thing is gonna get cooked. I don't like reading those stupid rumors. I don't care who the source is. I want it to be official. so that I could, not necessarily pass judgment, so that I can make it form an opinion. It's pretty much solidified at this point. Like, WB doesn't have to go out and say, hey, we're not gonna continue working on the game, and we're not gonna continue supporting it. When
they actually did, or at least the official Mortal Kombat account did. Basically, the game is in maintenance mode, and that's all, folks.
Release a definitive edition. You've pretty much already just said that in the happiest way you could possibly do it. So, yes, the leaker was correct, and the rumors were true, and I didn't want it to be true. And again, I don't follow that stuff. I wait until an official report comes out. So, but it is unfortunate that the game, like, this is all we get. Like, I feel like the fans deserve more. I feel like the genre deserves more. I feel like the story deserves more, especially the way the story ended. Like that felt like more like an episode than it was an actual expansion or a continuation of the story. It felt like an episode that was a part of a continuation of the story. The whole chaos thing with Weird Ass Havoc was kind of meh. Like, it didn't hit. It should have been. Yeah, it could have been way better. Let's just keep it real.
Like, outside of Tenya and Rain in the Chaos expansion story, so not the ones that we've already got in the main MK1 story, but the ones that showed up from the alternate timeline, they were great. They were actually great, but then they killed off Rain. Like, this dude can literally turn into puddles. Like, just what are you doing? Like, it was the stupidest way that he died. He never should have died. It was such a great couple, if you want to get down to it, on screen, and it was amazing. Absolutely amazing, those two characters, but the rest of Chaos Reigns, wow, what a fucking shit show.
It could have been way better. And I felt like they had an idea. They had an idea of where they were going to go with it. Maybe it was a slow build, and then a big climactic finish, like, was going to be the go-to at the end of it. But at the end of the day, that's not what happened, and it just, it was, we were all left saying that was it. And then when it finally came to its own climactic conclusion, we were like, okay, this is great. When's the next one? And now we get the pretty much definitive edition, which seals the nail in the coffin for this game being or having anything new to come along with it. And that sucks, man. That sucks. I kind of wanted to see where this is always going to go, even though the story was kind of not really going anywhere. I felt like the story wasn't going anywhere with the introduction of MK1 in the first place. It's hard to create a selling point for a different universe of Mortal Kombat. I feel it really doesn't matter what happens to the characters at that point, because they're just a small part of a vast expanding universe, so they can just get replaced. It's the MCU curse,
Mm-hmm,
like they don't know what to do with their characters after telling the same story for so long. I think when it comes to story, the pinnacle was MK9. MK9 was by far 100% without a doubt the best Mortal Kombat storyline that they could have done, and the rest was filler, even though MKX did a great job of what they did. But let's keep it real, no one gives a shit about Shinnok. And
there are no lies detected with this man. 100%. Shinnok, even going all the way back to MK4, Shinnok just wasn't threatening, right? And you know why he wasn't threatening? I'll tell you why he wasn't threatening, right? Because they made the grave mistake of my cat keeps activating the aircon. They made the grave mistake of making the boss character playable. Never make the boss character playable in the game, right? It was the very first time in a Mortal Kombat game they did that. Not obviously including Trilogy, because Trilogy was basically the bookend of the 2D era, so they just threw everything in there just for people to have fun. But outside of that, if you're looking at the actual proper releases, you never had a boss character playable in the game, like in the actual roster itself. So in the first game, we couldn't access Shang Tsung. In the second game, we could, but the bosses was then Shao Kahn. Third game was Shao Kahn. Ultimate was, Ultimate was Shao Kahn. And then in MK4, they decided to put Shinnok in the base roster. So then you use this character, and you're like, oh, okay, he's not overly threatening, right? It takes away all the mystique and the fear of going up against a character that you can't train against or for. And it just killed it. To me, anyway, that kind of killed the immersion of what they've been doing in MK games. Now, I know in games like Street Fighter, it had become a thing where they'll put the boss characters in there and you can play against them, right? But that in MK, they really purposely made sure, at least in the 2D era, that you couldn't access those bosses. You know, forgetting or putting aside trilogy, like I explained. But yeah, it was just dumb. And then yeah, like when you do stuff like that, it's just, it takes away everything. And of course in MK1 they did the same. Like the boss characters are literally available on the roster. Now maybe not initially with Quan Chi, but we eventually got him.
And Chronica, really, I guess
Chronic
they just
Edge
weren't solidified enough in the franchise for us to be that invested in those villains, in my opinion. And I think that now that they've just rebooted the franchise again, it's even less impactful now than it was with those two. So I think there's a lot of things that are missing from how they could tell a story at this point. It's unfortunate because we are left stranded. Like, that's the big bottom line, is that we're left stranded when it comes to Mortal Kombat as a story. And I'll say it with gameplay as well. But at the end of the day, I believe I had more fun, regardless of how much issues this game had. It was still more fun to play than MK11. And that's what a fighting, at the core of any fighting game, the gameplay has to be the thing that supersedes everything else. The gameplay. And if that doesn't do it, then...
Sort of. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously that's why you keep fighting, but you can have some sort of average fighting game gameplay, but still feel like the package is great. Like, it's still fun to muck around with and play. Like, if you want to pull up an old example of something like World Heroes, I mean, World Heroes, you know, isn't exactly known for its, you know, epic combos or anything like that, at least from my understanding. But World Heroes kind of broke some ground with things like stages that you could actually, like, be hurt upon. Like, there were spikes on one of the stages on either end. There was another one, I think, that had electrical, like, ring around it. But the gameplay was kind of simple. It wasn't, you know, we're not writing home about it, but it had, like, cool ninjas in it. It had, like, the Bruce Lee dude, dragon. And it kind of just, it's hard to describe, but there was an aura around it, right? So the gameplay wasn't strong, right? But because the game was cool, or at least I thought it was cool, then people kind of, you know, gave it a shot. Well, it wasn't like knocking down doors like, say, a Fatal Fury or Art of Fighting. But it was one of SNK, one of Neo Geo's, I thought, kind of little underrated gems. You know, I really liked, especially by the time World Heroes Jet came out, bigger roster, that sort of thing. I really like the World Heroes series. So I think you can get away with having sort of like, you know, not the greatest gameplay in the sense of like, yeah, like obviously you want the gameplay to feel accurate. Everything when you're doing a move, it's obviously coming out properly. But it doesn't have to be setting the world on fire. If the rest of the game around it is good, then I think that it can carry it a little bit. And kind of vice versa too. So if we're using 2D MK games as an example, you know, we didn't have any story outside of storyboards in the 2D era. Yet for some reason, we weren't bored playing those classic games. And that's because the gameplay, in my opinion, was the best. It was the absolute best of its time. And to be honest, I still prefer it. I'm not going to lie, I actually still prefer it. Maybe that just makes me an old head, but it was the foundation of MK. Anyone that's enjoying current Mortal Kombat has got to pay homage to the fact that it wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the strength and the story and lore building and the gameplay and the characters that the 2D era brought in.
Things just fall apart at the end of the day. And I think that a lot of the times that we try to justify our anger towards something like this basically becoming a flop. I don't know the total sales of this game. We probably won't know until the definitive edition gets shelved out.
5 million, apparently.
It feels like a flop. It feels like this was a hit and this was a miss. It feels like this was a miss for NetherRealm and WB and whatnot. I didn't really notice the microtransactions only because I didn't buy anything. But shady business practices like that is probably an issue. I don't care about microtransactions as long as they don't affect the gameplay. Microtransactions, as far as cosmetics are concerned, if that's how they want to take it, then sure, I'll play my characters and I'm having fun. I don't really care how they look.
Yeah, I'm not against microtransactions either, as long as it's done right and fairly. Right? That's the only things that matter. As long as it's done right and fairly. You know? But so far, Warner Brothers and NetherRealm have proven that they can't seem to be able to do this. It's kind of interesting when you think about it that Mortal Kombat 9 had 0 microtransactions outside of the actual additional characters that they added into the game, right? There was no, because when they released content, yes, you bought it off the store page and then that got added into the game. There was no in-game store or anything like that. There was no purchasing of currency to then buy stuff on an in-game store in Mortal Kombat 9. And we only ended up with 4 additional characters, unless you're on PlayStation with 5, right? With Kratos and Freddy being the 2 guests. And then, of course, we had Kenshi, we had Rain, and we had Scarlet. And it's really interesting how, of all those, like from MK9 all the way up to MK1, MK9 still is the best one to date, as he pointed out, like in regards to the story, but also to respect to the player. They respected the player when it came to like their money and the investment. And even though we ended up with like the least amount of DLC, it actually felt like we ended up with more because the entire product was amazing. And they were just adding sprinkles on top, nice little chocolate sprinkles. And it was fucking beautiful.
Them looking badass would probably give me more motivation to play the character. But outside of that, it's like, no, I just want to have fun. People are kind of blowing this out of proportion when it comes to their hatred and where they are directing it. So let's go over the tweets, because I think there's something to be said about some of the things that people out there are saying. And I tweeted about this. I said, what the dealio? Like, why are people not understanding that NetherRealm isn't to blame for this? Like, it seems strange that people don't realize, or just aren't wrapping around their heads, that you do realize that there is a difference between a developer and a publisher. And when you are trying to make a game, and when you do make a game, the publisher just basically takes over, and is their job to decide whether or not, how or when the longevity of said product goes out. So, yeah, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this, chat, because yeah, it's a weird, it's an odd take to say that for people to go after NetherRealm and Boon and the other devs like this when you don't really see the whole picture. Yeah. So my basic issue was
So okay, like, here's my problem with this, right? They are the developers. Who's making the game here? Because if NetherRealm don't do anything, if NetherRealm really have they have no input. Every single facet of everything that they've added into the game is completely and utterly controlled by Warner Brothers. meaning that Warner Brothers are deciding how this punch goes, how this kick goes, where we have this fatality, where we have that fatality, the indications of, the details of the gore and stuff for the fatalities, the amount of brutalities in the game. Like, everything is completely under Warner Brothers' control. So what are NetherRealm there for? I don't like this line of thinking because it's dangerous. This is the, oh, it's okay because we'll just blame the publisher for it. Everyone is at fault here because these people have signed contracts. They have decided to work for these companies, regardless of publisher or developer. They have, you know, Ed Boon, which is obviously the head of the direction of this game, and the previous ones, has made decisions. I don't think the boardroom was sat around and go, yeah, let's put cameos in the fighting game. There wasn't like a big push for assist fighting games when MK1 was coming out. Like, the closest that you can look at is 2XKO coming out from the League of Legends developer. Was it Riot Games? Is that them? And like, that's a tag fighter, right? So that's not even an assist fighter. Sure, you'll have assist mechanics, but it's actually a tag fighter, right? It's a 2-on-2. Well, sorry, it's a 2-on-2 fighter, right? But yeah, tag, right? Anyway, so my issue with this line of thinking is that it means that Ed Boon and NetherRealm completely get off scot-free. They're never challenged, they're never questioned. You know, they can just keep getting away with whatever they want. And I have a massive problem with that, because Ed Boon has been doing this for the longest time. Right? He's been doing he's been doing this for the longest time, right? All the way back to when he took over Deadly Alliance. Okay? And they were under Midway then. Right? It's really interesting how, like, yes, technically speaking, they were obviously the sort of central hub, if you will, to a degree, I suppose, with Midway. But, like, nobody blamed Midway when like Mortal Kombat came out. Like, you know, if people weren't happy with Deadly Alliance or say Armageddon. I know Deception is generally the one that everyone loves, in the 3D era, of course, naturally. But nobody went, oh, it's all Midway's fault if there's something wrong that they don't like in the game. And then something shifted. And now it's become the popular thing to just only blame Warner Brothers. But developers here are the ones creating this thing. They're designing the stages, designing the characters, deciding how many characters are in the game, what moves they're going to have, the way the gameplay feels, the animations, the mechanics, all of that sort of thing is part of the development, not the published process.
What bothers me about this whole situation is how many people are actually blaming NRS and specific devs for the outcome of MK1. It's like you do know at the end of the day that this situation is out of their hands, right? Right? And feedback was kind of crazy because I do like what a lot of people were saying. Either way, and I like what Maury Gamer says. Either way, it's a crap situation regardless of where you point the finger. I think pointing the finger has to be done when it comes to a situation like that, because if the game is successful, no fingers are pointed, all hats are off to the developer, and that happened with MKX, happened with MK9, and you know, some of the earlier Mortal Kombats. But you know, when they mess up, call them out. Don't be a dick about it. Like I feel like the MK community tends to be really entitled, and they tend to be assholes about it, and that's not really necessary. It's just,
well, it depends on who's doing what, right? So like, I'm pretty abrasive, but I also have a massive history with MK by playing them from the beginning. It's my favorite fighting game franchise and one of my favorite franchises of all time. And as a customer, I feel like I'm in a position where I can go, okay, you know, the reason why these games have sold well and how I've invested, like why I've invested in them, is because of X, Y, and Z, right? And yeah, I mean, like, he's right. Like, you know, obviously, if the game is a massive success, right, they would be praising Warner Brothers and be praising NetherRealm. But, you know, I'm blaming both here. I'm not just blaming one or the other, right? Because they're both in bed together.
How does this affect the game as a whole, or how does that affect how people see the development of the game as a whole. Things do not look good for Injustice nor NRS as a whole. I do hope Injustice 3 is in the works after this. I truly do. I think that's what they need to pivot to anyway. They need to pivot to Injustice 3 at this point. Take some time. Take some time to actually really develop the next Mortal Kombat.
Injustice 3 will kill him. Injustice 3 will kill him. Right? There is not enough bigger fan base to save NetherRealm with Injustice. Everyone has superhero fatigue. People are sick and tired. You know, or at the very least, yeah, we have superhero fatigue. Like somebody said this the other day, and I do agree. They said it's because of the poor writing and stuff, and that's true. But it's irrespective of why we're here. We have the fatigue regardless. So it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't think you're really going to turn the ship around at this point, because I think in general the genre has been so flooded, you know, with not so much the games, but more the TV shows and the movies, that people are just tired of it. They want something different. You know, they want something that just stands out, something new, something, maybe an original IP, you know, things like that. And just to, you know, I think, like, as I've stated before, I think the only way to get some respect back is to start boxing up their old games and selling them as collections, like Capcom is doing. And when they come back to Mortal Kombat, have a good long think about what made MK great. Because as far as I'm concerned, nothing in the NRS era outside of MK9, which was developed under Midway, has done anything, excuse me, that I consider great. Personally, as a fan of the series since the very first game.
Don't go right off the bat from this and that. You're not Activision. This isn't Call of Duty. You don't have to constantly go back to back to back to back with Mortal Kombat. It does not work when you're trying to flesh out a completely well thought out story. It does not work that way.
Well, the problem is because the writing team, which Total MK exposed, went from a whole list of writers in MK9 down to a single one in MK1. It's not about not fleshing it out. It's about the fact that they have culled the writing team down to one guy who was clearly an idiot when it comes to knowing how to do Mortal Kombat story. We got better storytelling in the 2D era, and that was fuck all. When you think about it, we had intro cards, we had storyboards, and then we had the endings. And somehow they were able to convey an incredible creation of these characters and where they're at and where their headspace is at, you know, in these older games. And that was all the way back in the 90s and 2000s. You know, when we got into the 3D era, we got a little bit more, you know, things like that, because then we could actually have... with MK4 they introduced actual like voiced lines with the MK4 endings, things like that, and that's cool. And obviously the sort of overarching like story card, if you will, was Raiden standing in the rain talking, you know, giving his little speech, and that's all really cool, right? But they have lost their way. It's not about the fact that, oh, you know, if they bring out another MK game, they're screwed. Yes, I believe they need a break. They need to go back to the past. They need to give us the past, right? With rollback netcode. I've already talked about this at length in the collections they should do. And then look at also the past and go, why were these MK games so beloved? Right? Because otherwise, if you continue to make this slop, it doesn't matter how many writers you have or anything like that. If you don't have your finger on the pulse of what made MK great, you will never get out from under this rock.
It just makes things way worse for you in the long run, and that's what we saw in MK1. Let's be real, the story wasn't that great, and at the end of the day, that game was rushed. I think when it comes to when your game is like us, and we played video games for as long as we have, we can tell the difference between... I just want to point out, like, we're getting gameplay of T1000, and the box art for the definitive edition is showcasing all the non-MK DLC characters. Right? I just want to point that out. When a developer has time to actually hash out their product and a game that's being rushed. We can all see it a mile away. And let's keep it real. This game was rushed. And just by looking at what is going on with the things that are missing from the game and how the game is paced and how it's presented, you could tell that it was something that was created before. That game was something completely different. That game was something completely different, and it got turned into Mortal Kombat. And we could all tell. We can't confirm it, but you could definitely tell that game was something else. Yeah, Warner Brothers' track record next to Activision, 2K, and EA is the worst when it comes to live service and their AAA titles. Yeah, I think NetherRealm is the only company that really knocks it out of the park for WB. WP, like first party stuff for that company, probably usually doesn't go very well. It's probably more Warner Brothers NRS at this point. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, like the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War Lord of the Rings games were actually pretty decent. The reason why there was a controversy around Shadow of War was because of the single player aspect having loot boxes, which then people on PC basically made trainers to get around it, to give people infinite loot boxes and not have to worry about paying for that shit in a single player game. But outside of that, the gameplay and the systems in place were actually a lot of fun, right? It's just that over the years, what's happened is that they have decided to follow the weirdos on Twitter, inject their gaming development studios with woke and DEI absolute filth that don't actually care about the quality of the franchises that they're working on and the development of the characters or the world that they're building, and end up destroying this stuff. And then they go, I don't know why it's not selling. So MK is a big seller, right? But after a year, just over a year and a half, they've shit canned it, right? And this is their golden goose. There's nothing else that they have that outpaces this, except you could argue maybe Hogwarts Legacy. And I believe, from memory, they shit canned the sequel. And Hogwarts Legacy did great, but it feels like just because of who it's attached to with J.K. Rowling, they decided to go all stupid and almost like cut their nose off to spite their face. Hogwarts Legacy was a seller, from what I understand, for them, right? Now, I believe that's also one of the franchises that they listed, but if they've shit-canned the sequel, then what else are they going to do, right? Unless they're going to just keep adding DLC to the original game, right? They might do that. I don't think it's ever been done before, but it's possible, I guess. But anyway, let's move on.
As if Warner Brothers isn't the same company responsible for multiverses. Exactly. And I literally just said that too. Wrong with the game, but it's still sad to see it get abandoned like this. I hope WB learns from the lessons. They won't. And MK2 or 13 is a game that takes its time in development wise and brings us back to the highs we know NRS is capable of. That takes time. I think that takes time. The only people to blame is Warner Brothers, since they make the final calls. What Ed Boon and his team do, it's a damn shame. Yep, 100%. Happens every time in most situations. So I can never really blame the devs, because I know they never have the final say, unfortunately. And that's, how do you? Your check is coming from an outside source, and the outside source will determine on how you make that product, or how the product is or the time frame on how the product is being made. So,
and my counter argument to that is that these people that have decided to work for NetherRealm did so under their own volition. They signed the contract. They read the contract. The lawyers have all gone over the contract and said, yep. No. Modify. Yep, cool. Sign on the dotted line. Fold up, put in the drawer. Here's your paycheck for the next 1,000 years. These people are not held hostage, right? This isn't like, I'm not like blaming Infinite for this, but I do kind of wonder if this is one of those sort of like social contagions where NetherRealm gets the free pass because, you know, the cool thing to do on the block is to hate on Warner Brothers, which absolutely it is. Not just cool, but necessary, just like with companies like EA and Ubisoft. I mean, I go so far back that I remember EA buying up small studios like Bullfrog and Westwood and absolutely gutting and killing them, right? And before that, Westwood was killing it with their Command and Conquer games. And then you had Bullfrog with their theme park and theme hospital and type games. And then EA swooped in, bought them up, and then absolutely just gobbled them up and spat them out and just ruined, just absolutely annihilated those development studios. And we've been seeing this over decades, right? Where, you know, either Microsoft does it or Sony does it, where they cancel studios, you know, all this sort of stuff. And you know, I actually think that we have a lot of stagnant creativity in gaming, right, in terms of the West, but it seems like the East are the ones that are picking up the slack, giving gamers exactly what they want. I've advocated that maybe the IP should be sold off to someone that actually respects and understands what makes Mortal Kombat great, right? But under the helm of Ed Boon, you know, it's kind of going nowhere. And I kind of don't agree with, you know, oh, it's just all got to be Warner Brothers' fault. It has to be. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't, right? Absolutely not.
So you really got to decide on how that does. They deserve some of the blame, at least. After all, they are the ones that developed the god-awful Invasions mode and wrote the Chaos Reign story. Okay. That's fair. I think that when you are a company that has the time to make the game and it's a product. You are hired to make a product. You have to be sure that the product is that the quality of the product is up to par, so that the said publisher can sell a product that is worth the consumer's time. So, does a certain amount of blame go off to NetherRealm? Of course. I wouldn't sit here and say they don't deserve they deserve none of the blame. Obviously not. But the main finger is being pointed at NetherRealm, and I think that's disingenuous to.
I don't think it is, because at the end of the day, this is how consumers consuming something works, or buying a product, right? You know, like if you, I'm just trying to think of an example, and I may not be able to, but essentially, like, you know, if you buy a product and the person that you bought it, so you bought like a fridge, and that particular fridge, like say Westinghouse, right? The fridge suddenly has problems. Well, if Westinghouse, for example, was owned by, say, an umbrella company, right? You're not going to point the fingers at the umbrella company. You're going to point at the fingers that actually had their fingers inside the creation of this thing. Warner Brothers obviously has, you know, I'm saying, a pretty big sway when it comes to microtransactions and how we're going to monetize this and the guest characters in the game, which is why the guest characters now just feel like oh yeah, we need to pimp out our old franchises. Let's get them out there. You know, let's get people knowing about this shit, you know, just for whatever's sake, right? I completely think that this was Injustice 3 and they changed it mid-cycle as per details in the code that actual reverse engineers have gotten into and found. And because of that, you know, that's why this game, like I've said many times, if you made an entire Injustice mod for MK1, it's Injustice 3. It would play like an Injustice game. It would feel like an Injustice game. And yes, it absolutely would be an Injustice game. Now, I think what's happened is they've had to course correct, because they realized that Injustice doesn't sell as well as Mortal Kombat, and they had to basically do a lot of, you know, fixer-uppering in a very short space of time, which is why people say that it should have been out a lot later on, maybe into 2024. But maybe they were trying to pip Tekken 8 to the post, so that way they could like get in some sales before Tekken 8 came out, because at that point Tekken 8 was looking like a juggernaut, and it kind of seemed like it was, but obviously we know the history now of what's actually happened since launch of that. So, you know, there has to, I'm sorry, but like these guys developed the game. They made this stuff. But you've got to blame both parties. You've got to blame both NetherRealm, and you've also got to blame Warner Brothers, because let's be honest, they're in bed together. Nobody was forced to work there, right? They did this of their own volition. It's as simple as that.
What that game, or how game development works, I think people are missing the overall point there. So, Yeah, I definitely understand where they're coming from, but yeah, that's just really bad. The expansion being $50 is such a devastating decision. The expansion being $50 is such a devastating decision. What do you mean by that? Oh yes, okay, never mind. The expansion. I'm thinking of the definitive edition. My fault. No, never mind. Yes, the expansion being $50 alone is insane. Let's give it a buck. That's crazy. I don't know what the hell they were doing. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that. Again, it was probably a cash grab. They probably needed the money to continue working on it, and so they said, well, up the price on that. They should have known from a marketing standpoint that wasn't going to be viable. People are not that insane. But this always happens in development when it takes so long and so much work to make an expansion of that caliber. There was a lot going on with that story. Let's keep it real. That took a lot of time, that took a lot of effort, and it probably cost them a lot of money. The general population isn't ready for those kind of prices. Like, you have to understand your market. You can't just throw out a price like that and be like, hey, we're Mortal Kombat, this is gonna, and the buck stop here. We know the people are gonna buy, and that's the end of it. No, you got to know that the market isn't immediately drop everything and run and buy your product, especially when it wasn't that good. So yeah, it's probably not a good idea. Always so sad to see people come for the devs' throats when these kinds of situations are influenced by corporate management. And again,
but not every aspect of the game was being controlled by corporate management, because nobody has any evidence that it's being controlled completely by corporate management. This is just like it's sharing an opinion and a possibility of the thought process ending up being true. But like all of us, we don't actually have any. We don't actually have any evidence whatsoever of how deep the involvement is with Warner Brothers. What we do have evidence of is that the game that I have bought, called Mortal Kombat 1, developed by NetherRealm Studios, published by Warner Brothers Studios, this game is now going to be held to put their feet to the fire with both of those companies, both developer and publisher, about the state of the product. You have always got to come back to, being at the consumer end, because that's the only thing that matters, right? This is an entertainment product. Has the game entertained you? Yes or no? If it has, great. If it hasn't, obviously not so great, right? But Warner Brothers didn't make the game. NetherRealm made the game. They developed it, they designed the systems, they decided what they wanted to have in the game, and then they promoted this stuff, right? So the normal consumer position is they are always going to hold the person that actually created the thing, who also created the previous thing, and the previous thing, and the previous thing, who then were also all the way back into Midway, who were then creating the previous thing, and the previous thing, and the previous thing. This is how it works. And Ed Boon has been at the helm of this shit by himself since Deadly Alliance. And I've been calling that shit out since forever. Right? At some point, because this is why things don't change. I've been saying this forever too. Right? If you keep just ignoring Ed Boon and ignoring NetherRealm and just going, oh, it's all Warner Brothers' fault, it's all Warner Brothers' fault, right? Then there are probably parts of it that are, sure, absolutely. But they are not hostages. They decided to work there. They read the contracts. They know exactly what was expected of them, hence the contract. That's why you have to make sure that the contract is airtight, so they can't try and force you to do something you don't want to do, because then you can just go to a lawyer and say, hey, listen, they're trying to do this, and it's not part of my agreement. That's how it works, especially for these guys, right? And since we have no evidence whatsoever of Warner Brothers' involvement, what we do have evidence of is NetherRealm's involvement in the Mortal Kombat creation franchise, both when they were NetherRealm and, of course, previously when they were Midway. And I'm talking about the teams there. And the teams under Midway had a higher success rate of bumping out amazing Mortal Kombat games versus the NRS era. And you might go, well, but the sales, Fate. The sales speak for themselves. Sure, something can sell a lot, but it doesn't mean to say it was great. As an example, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the opening weekend for The Flash, right, did absolutely amazing. But as soon as it came out, I think it had one of the steepest drop-offs of all time, because once people went out and spent the money, because there's no other way to preview or watch the movie outside of going to the cinema naturally. Once they come out, the reviews start dropping. Opinions start being shared, and they're like, nah, this is shit. It's crap. What, like, terrible CGI. There's a couple of cool bits, like Nick Cage as Superman, you know, which is what was going to be an actual role of his under Tim Burton, which would have been pretty fucking cool, to be perfectly honest, right? And so there's a massive sharp decline after that, because suddenly people are going, nah, don't bother, and I'll tell you why, right? And so sales, I don't think, to me personally, is a big selling point. Sales to me matter, and opinion along with it matters if two are both going along consecutively at the same time. Because if they are able to maintain that strength, at least for longer than a weekend or a week, you know, maybe say a month, I think would be a nice stretch for a brand new game coming out, especially an IP, brand new IP. Then we can go, yes, this was a success, because not only did it sell well, the retention rate and the excitement and the positive outcome from it has also traveled along with the sales as well. But if you get something like The Flash, where everyone goes in, they spend the money, they watch the movie, and then they come out of it going, that was a wicked pile of shit, right? Then the word spreads, and there's a massive drop-off, right? And people go, yeah, but we made $100 billion in that one weekend. Yes, because people were excited to see a Flash movie, with Michael Keaton, especially as a draw card, coming back as Bruce Wayne and Batman. But outside of that, it fucking tanked, right? Because nobody gave a shit, because once they got their hands on it, they're like, nah, this is bad, man. This is terrible, all right? So when they might tout sales for MK games, okay, there's a couple of things there. When you're being given an Injustice game as an MK fan, you're just waiting for the MK game. You don't give a shit really about Injustice to a degree. You might play it, sure, but it's not Mortal Kombat. So then when the new Mortal Kombat start being announced, you start seeing teasers, the marketing ramps up, blah, blah, blah. Then with something like MK11, everyone was just so fired up to get in there and play an MK game after such a long period of time, you know, between MK10 and then, of course, the release of MK11, right? So it sold well, but most people don't like it. Even though it sold, what, 15 million, I believe it was, copies? Most people, after a while, didn't like it, right? So there are various factors here to determine whether or not something has truly been a success or not. Sometimes you get a product and it takes a bit to try and figure out whether or not it's good. Sometimes it's instantaneous, like Expedition 33. Sometimes, like The Flash, it's an instant crash out. So, you know, I don't like the idea of completely using sales as a metric of going, this is perfect, right? Because there's got to be a little bit more to it than that, for me personally.
I think people are looking at it from the wrong lens, you know? NRS made the games. There are obvious NRS choices in this game, and sucks due to it. I blame WB for microtransactions. The rest is NRS. The need for adding dumb gimmick every game, the standard shit story, and the horrible invasion mode. Again, the same thing as a previous person said, just in a more more detailed way, I guess. Literally so many people don't realize the difference between publisher and developer. Yep.
No offense to this gentleman, not Infinite, but the other guy saying this. You know, most people don't realize the difference. Actually, they probably do. You're just assuming that they don't because the narrative suits you because of it, right? It is just like it's absolutely ridiculous to think that people are that stupid that they may not know. There are some people that may not know, but it doesn't mean that they're stupid. It just means that they probably don't give a shit or care openly. You know, they just see the game, they buy it, they take it home, they have some fun with it, or they don't have fun with it, and that's the end of it, right? But this is very dismissive. This is another get out of jail free card, right?
It's unfortunate fate when you're owned by WB. And again, WB's first parties hasn't been that great either. So you can see how that works out. And this guy posts... Well,
two things can be right at the same time. Warner Brothers have been fumbling for quite a long time, naturally, because they decided to get in bed with Sweet Baby Inc. That was advertised on their website. Naturally, I mean, I know some people like will go, but they're not specifically connected to Mortal Kombat. They may not be in the credits, but I can guarantee you that the company-wide ecosystem was absolutely infected with this, and you will never convince me otherwise of it. It is absolutely true, given past statements from people that have worked in the team, and also the state of what we got with MK11, the starting state of MK10, and of course the final product, the end game of essentially the most corporate.tm Mortal Kombat game we've ever had. Yes, this was one of the worst decisions that Warner Brothers ever did, and it is just mind-baffling, right? You know, how they were able to screw up everything when some of this stuff is a home run. Like, I didn't care much for the Kill the Justice League stuff. I don't really care, you know, for that. But they could have pumped out a Batman game and probably saved the company, right? But in their arrogance and stupidity, they decided to make other decisions and destroy their games, destroy the IPs. And, you know, I always think back to those couple of times I said it before, where there's been talk about them selling off the gaming division, and I always pray for it. Because I not only do I pray for it, but I really hope that, you know, Mortal Kombat gets into the hands of developers that actually want to create Mortal Kombat and make it great again. That's my hope, personally.
Tom Brady. So Tom Brady goes, stop blaming WB. Ending MK1's life cycle is not a poor NRS shackled by WB's decisions. It's 100% the fault of NRS. WB made this decision because NRS made an expansion that people didn't buy. That's not WB's fault. That's NRS. NRS made the game, not WB. So, yeah, I respectfully disagree. Tom Brady is a good at this game. He's absolutely amazing with his Sub-Zero, and everybody knows that he is an OG when it comes to Mortal Kombat. But I just respect.
Oh, do I have stories to tell you, brother? Actually, the internet does. I'm just simply the messenger. No, as I've stated, Warner Brothers and NRS are at fault here. 100%. Right? That's just a fact. Right? And he has, as usual, no evidence whatsoever. Not infinite, Tom. He has no evidence of this. This is just, you know, vapping into the wind with no evidence whatsoever of this sort of stuff, right? I mean, Mortal Kombat 1 as a whole in the eyes of general MK fans, because you got to remember, there are a whole bunch of MK fans that outweigh the amount of FGC type, like, for the people that compete, right? And I talk to these people, right? They have run their own podcasts, or run their own websites, run their own YouTube channels, right? And these are just MK fans. Guys that just love Mortal Kombat. They may not be as good as somebody pressing buttons like this old weirdo, but at the very end of the day, right, what matters, not infinite, Tom, right? At the end of the day, right, they just want a Mortal Kombat to be great, okay? And they feel a massive dissatisfaction with the state of the game on a whole metric ton of levels. Everything from sound design, set effects, music, you know, character design, special moves, stage design, lack of stage fatalities, you know, the overabundance of gore in the game now, which feels like they're basically every character's performing torture. You know, I could go on and on and on and on and on, right?
I respectfully disagree. I don't think that this is a great take, because he's not taking into account the level of pressure that is bestowed on the WB when it comes to these publishers. So let's take a scenario, okay? I know a lot of you guys are artists, right? So let's say I hire you as an artist to make a drawing, right? And then I say, hey, you're an artist, right? Can you make like a comic book for me? Yes, make a comic book. And they're like, sure, I could do that. It's going to take some time. You know, I'm going to need like the ink, and I'm going to need all the tools. And, you know, it's going to take like quite some time. I was like, hey, make it for me in 5 days. Here's $20. As an artist, you're going to be like, what? No, I can't do that. I'm going to need you to pay me more. And I'm going to need you to give me more time to actually make this comic book. Are you out of your mind? You're like, yeah, you figure it out. All right, well, we'll come back later. Don't forget, I own you. Within the third day of his 5 days of working on his comic book, I come back and I said, hey, so you know that comic book idea that I had? That deal didn't go through, so you're gonna have to make a completely different comic, and I'll give you like a couple more days, and here's an extra $5. Bye. When you are a developer and you are under those kind of conditions, it does not matter how good your product was before, you are not going to make a good product. It is clear as day that they did not have enough time to polish the game as it should have been, and it is clear as day that there are things that were missing from the game. You don't go from MK9 that had lobbies, MKX that had lobbies, and MK11 that had lobbies to a brand new title in today's age that had literally no lobbies. There's something wrong. You obviously did not have enough time, and things went haywire by the time you actually delivered. And as I said before, it is clear as day that this game was something else before it became Mortal Kombat. Clear as day.
I agree with that 100%. Yep.
This kind of take is disingenuous.
But at the same time, MK11 wasn't, and MK11 had a whole host of problems too. Right? And again, as the customer, right, when you've got the head figure of Ed Boon out there telling everyone that game's going to have support for years, right, we are taking him at his word as the customer. We have handed over our money to a bunch of people that get paid on the daily, employed, making a whole shit ton of cash. Why should I feel sorry for these people? They're not my friends. There's no relationship here. They are the developer and I am the consumer. Right? Now, I'm not saying that these people aren't nice people, but this is where it gets really sticky, because then they start to try and prey on feelings and go, oh, but you know, they work hard and they had to do this and they had to do that. But it doesn't matter, because they still put out a product. They decided for themselves to be a part of a company that is obviously dog shit. At some point, somebody has to start taking accountability for what's going on. Yes? No? Okay.
And I think it has way too much tunnel vision to go after NRS like that. Is not seeing the whole picture. And people need to realize that when you're in that capacity to get funding from an outside source, you have to follow the rules of the outside source. And they will tell you, this is how much you get, this is the deadline, make it work. And we've seen that a bunch of times. We've seen that with devs that are under contract under publishers, and we've seen independent devs that do it themselves. What was the game? No Man's Sky, and also Cyberpunk. Those games are homegrown and made by the devs themselves. So in that aspect, yeah, I put the blame 100% on the devs in those situations. But they too are also working with a budget, and games are getting more complex and more difficult to make with every generation. And if that is the case with Mortal Kombat, how do you expect to compete when you got games like, you know, Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out looking like real life over here, and your game still looks like it's made off of a PS2? Like, all that stuff takes way too much time that isn't conducive to what is considered the time frame from when you need to release a new Mortal Kombat. It just isn't viable anymore. You have to give them time, and you want something to be good so bad that, just like Funky Savage said, you get blinded by the hype, and then you play it and you're like, this isn't a good product. This just generally isn't a good product. Should I blame them for Invasions? Here's the thing about that. Invasions was bad. Everybody knows that. Most of the time when a dev makes a good product, it's because of a trial and error. They make a product. I'm pretty sure Invasions sounded really good on paper. You have an idea, you hash it out, you put it to you put it to the test. What you need in that point, you need game testers to polish out the game, and you need a focus group to help you understand if your target audience is even going to enjoy it. I seriously doubt they had enough time to really flesh out the game, Invasions, and give it to the people to where they could bring back feedback and then they rework it. I'm pretty sure they only had enough time to hash out the idea, give it out to the people, and hope it works. And unfortunately, it probably wasn't a good idea. And that's really bad, because if they had the time to actually if they had the time to get the feedback and then make some reworks and stuff like that, Invasions probably would have been a way better.
I think Invasions was a joke. I mean, Invasions is terrible, and he admits that it is such, right? The problem with Invasions is that there's nothing special about it. Walk, fight, walk, fight, walk, fight, walk, fight. It's busy work, right? They took the augment or the systems that they had in place in like MK11, with having like the ability to, and of course now they made it the talisman, so you could apply certain things to deal with certain effects or stage things that were happening, make you immune to, say, fire or lightning or freezing or something like that, and it was all just rubbish that they developed in MK11, which they then, I believe, started in Injustice 2 with the stupid augment stuff. It's a waste of resources. All of that stuff is a waste of resources, right? And they waste all this crap on stuff that nobody's interested in. We just want a great fighting game. And you don't have to do much. You don't have to spend much in order to do that. Because if you waste all your money on crap like Invasions, right? Which does nothing, especially after, and I'll credit MK11 for this. The crypt mode in MK11 was absolutely on point. And I actually thought originally, when leaks were coming out about some new Invasions mode, that they'd taken the idea of the MK11 crypt, making an NPC character like a non sort of like specific MK character NPC that you play as, just like an MK11 in the crypt, and you'd be running or invading realms, in the same vein that we did with Shang Tsung's Island, but it never ended up being the case. It was just this crappy mobile game. It looked like something that you would have on a mobile game, right? And it's like, oh, but you fight. Yeah, but what's the point? Like, it's just, it's dull, it's boring, and every single combat cast, they tried to get everyone excited for it and rehash shit. Some of it was straight up lies. For example, the Melina season, the first time around, they were saying, oh, this is Melina's season. It was clearly Havoc's season, right? It was clearly, because now we do have Melina's season, and guess what? We got Melina skins, right? I mean, they are all over the place. They have no idea what they're doing. They have lost touch with what makes Mortal Kombat great, and it's just like piles of sand, grains of sand make a heap eventually, and that's exactly what MK1 is. It is a culmination of grains of sand over the course of NRS developing these fighting game franchises under their exclusive banner after MK9, and eventually we now have the heap, and that is MK1.
Concept and how it was, and I feel the same thing with the Invasions as well. That stuff was just, here, we need something now, put it out now, we have it now. Okay, give us money, $50 for this thing that we had to shelve out because we had to make money. Understand that Ed Boon himself said that, oh yeah, I'm gonna and I've seen all of the tweets and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna make a new expansion. It's going to be a lot of new things that are going to happen, and I can't wait. And people like literally shitted down his neck because they're like, oh, Ed Boon's a liar and he's terrible and all stuff like that. And it's like, you do realize that this is what he was expecting. He didn't think that the thing was going to get shelved like that, otherwise he wouldn't have said that. So why? I understand at a certain point he's at fault for creating a product that didn't sell, but when you're put in such a tight budget and such a tight time frame to put said product together, you do the best you can, and that's just the bottom line. And it's
And I don't disagree with this. I think he is making some really good points. It's just the fact that I always come back to the customer point of view, right? Doing the best you can, with the price of the games that we get now. It kind of doesn't wash with me, because it's like, then they come out and they keep pimping it out and all that sort of stuff. And I know contractually they're probably supposed to do that, but it doesn't help. And again, these people have signed contracts. I don't know if they have to review them every year and re-sign them, or they do it every few years. I don't know. But nobody is held prisoner at NetherRealm. Right? At some point, there has to be some accountability. Now, I did cover a little bit ago that there was this one clip of Ed Boon being asked about the classic games at some event. He was with John Tobias and I believe Sal DeVita and Kerry Hoskins. And he seemed to perk up when being asked about the classics, right? Because I'll be honest, man, like this is how you rebuild trust. This is how you rebuild your legacy, right? To be perfectly honest, I would take everything that NRS has made after MK9 and I would flush it down the toilet and not a single thing would be lost on me. I would not miss those games at all. Nothing about them makes me go, gee whiz, I really miss playing MK10, or I really miss playing Injustice 2, or I really miss playing MK11, or really miss playing MK1, right? I've tried. I have tried to enjoy, especially the MK games, obviously. I've tried to enjoy them, and I've tried to find the diamond in the rough. That's why when I with MK11, when I found out it was basically a giant loot box with their reset system with the crypt, I came back years later, right? There were more characters in there, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to jump on Cabal because they fuck Scorpion, and I just had some fun with Cabal online and casuals, right? And that was it. That was the only fun I had over MK11. Okay, one character out of an entire product. That's disgraceful. Okay, and then when MK1 was coming out, I thought it was going to be better. I hated the name. I still hate the name. I thought that, okay, yep, we're getting some OG characters back from the 3D era, and even before that in MK4, like Reiko, who I main. And then oh yeah, we got a cameo system, assist system, and like, oh shit, okay. Nobody asked for this, not a single soul. We've been asking for Tag to come back. And then Boom goes, oh, and he made an excuse. Oh, but nobody really played Tag. Every single person that I know that has played MK9, even moderately at the lowest end, enjoyed Tag mode. By and large, it was a loved addition to the game. And I say that again, addition. It wasn't the main game. It was an addition outside of the 1v1. You see, if they made the cameos an addition instead of main game, I think MK1 would have done a lot better. Right? Because nobody really wants to play an assist fighter when it has been an established 1v1 fighter for so long. It's okay if you want to have different types of game modes. I actually think it would be kind of exciting to have something like an assist mode in Mortal Kombat that's a separate game mode, reworked properly. I've given my ideas on this before, right? And then you could have another mode where the combat, instead of punches and kicks, you can choose a weapon and that replaces the attacks of the punches and kicks. You still have access to your special moves and off you go, have some fun. Then you could have a tag mode. You see where I'm going with this? You could just go crazy by adding these slightly modified game modes, and that gives people a lot of things to do. Hey, let's have a fight night with weapon combat tonight. Let's have a fight night with you know, what I don't know what you could call it. Call it something better than cameo, right? Mode, or you could do just a standard 1v1. You know, tag, whatever you want. You know, you could even have a 2-on-2 simultaneous fight, right? Where both of you jump in and are fighting the other team at the same time, rather than it being a tag system. This is stuff that I'm thinking of because I've seen it in games like Mugen games, free games that you can download that are doing this kind of stuff, and it's incredible. And this is done by fans that love the franchise and the series. How could a multi-million-dollar company as NetherRealm and a multi-billion-dollar at Warner Brothers be so extinct with creativity? It baffles my mind, man.
It's up to us. It's up to us as consumers to decide if we want to buy that product or not. And I feel a little bamboozled that I spent $50 on a damn expansion that was subpar. What can you do? I blame Megan Fox for her bad voice acting. Guys, please. It's the same scenario, Tiff. It's the same scenario. You cannot blame the actor when it is the casting director and the director and the producer of the game that greenlights it. They were the first to hear her voice. They were the first to see that acting, and they said, yeah, this sounds good. Put it in. Obviously, that was a mistake. Not necessarily her not doing a good job, but them seeing the bad job and saying, yeah, this is fine. So I think again, the blame goes to the people that were putting stuff together. And when you look at it from their perspective, which are the devs, which means it's their fault, they only had enough time to say, if we hire her within this time frame, we'll get the voice in there. Oh no, she's terrible. What do we do with this time frame?
So something else, I think TMK told me this, and maybe some other folk as well, that they also do a lot of third-party outsourcing to have someone develop let's one thing here, like a bush here, or a background over here, and things like that. And when you start doing that, you start developing a disconnect between the different teams. And then when you piece it all together, some of it really kind of feel like it doesn't overall fit. You know, it kind of feels a little alien, or it kind of feels a little off. But if you go back and you play, especially the original games, and listen, I'm an old guy. You know, this is what I love about MK, especially the old games, and that's where I come from. It is the foundation, and that's just the end of it for me. But there is an absolute cohesion because everyone was working together in the same building, working on everything at the same time. You know, talking with each other, you know, getting ideas, sharing, all that sort of stuff. And you can see it in the end product. You can see how wonderful that these older games were. Even the 3D era Mortal Kombat games, which again, I wasn't a fan of the 3D combat. There was, outside of that, there was a cohesiveness to MK. It felt like Mortal Kombat. Everything from the menu, sound effects, music, you know, the character fatalities, except for Deadly Alliance, because I think they were trying way too hard to distance themselves to a degree, or create essentially like a light Tekken / violent Tekken, if you will. And then Deception rectified, like it completely steered the ship back on course. But they still felt like Mortal Kombat games. But we don't have that anymore. They just kind of feel like this cinematic slop. Like just the music doesn't stand out anymore. The sound effects don't stand out anymore. We don't get the uppercut, ooh, or excellent. You know, we don't get anymore. We don't even get the roaring fucking trees in the living forest anymore, or the corrupted forest. Like they're just postcards in the background. Like they don't do anything apart from look cool. But part of what made Mortal Kombat great was this air of mystery and some of the trepidation and fear that some of these stages would make. Oh, is that going to be a stage fatality, or what's going to happen? You know, the talk for decades about imagine throwing someone into the tree in the living forest came true in Mortal Kombat 9. That is fucking cool, man. Right? And you know why they did it? Because they listened. Because the team was cool. They were still edgy. They were still Mortal Kombat. They were still, you know, fingers on the pulse of what made MK just this excellent, you know, edgelord fucking like fighting game compared to everything else. And you now look at it and it's safe, it's too clean, you know, but hey, we're going to give everyone the ability to torture their opponent at the end of a fight. Yeah, nah, man, nah. Not
well,
jiving.
We don't have any more time. Put it in and just move on to the next thing. Okay, here we go. And the quality of the product goes down under that. Now, I would say that was the case, but we also saw MK11 and what they did with that DJ. I forget his freaking name. He was 10 times worse. And then they also had the MMA fighter chick as well. Yeah, Ronda Rousey. There you go. They also had Ronda Rousey as well, and you know, that was an effort. I don't think it's fair, man. I think people should cut NRS some slack and hopefully give them enough time to work on a new product that isn't being shoved down their throats from WB, and they have the time to flesh out a new product that is worth actually purchasing. If you're gonna try to charge me $50 for an expansion, make it worth it. I'm not opposed to a $50 expansion if the product is worth that, you know. So you've got to give us something. The overall problem with all of this, guys, and you guys got to understand, the overall problem with this is that if they make a product and the product is bad and doesn't sell, company goes under. WB shelves NetherRealm as a studio. They get broken up, whatever. They liquidate all the assets and then they move on to the next thing. That is not what we want. We don't want Mortal Kombat to fail. We know when something's bad when we see it, and we express that. But it is up to them at the end of the day to understand their core audience. And maybe listening to the people too much can also backfire on them sometimes. But overall, I think
you know what, I actually agree with that statement, right? And I don't expect NetherRealm, like I even though I put forth a lot of ideas and how things could be fixed, going back to the root stuff like that. Again, I'm not an expert, but as far as like you know, obviously I've never said I was when it comes to the gameplay side of things, but I do prefer the older games when it comes to the gameplay. Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. Just because it's old doesn't mean to say it's like crap or obsolete or rubbish, right? That's why games like Street Fighter Third Strike are still very popular. Capcom vs SNK 2. Oh, sorry, Marvel vs Capcom 2, right? Or Capcom vs SNK 2, I suppose, if you want. And of course, things like Street Fighter Alpha 3. The reason why these games are very popular still is because of, you know, even though they're old, functionally, they're great. They're really, really solid and fun fighting games to play. And that's why I love playing the older games, because they really are very cool. And I love how they feel, the speed, the impact, the sound effects, everything just kind of really gels well together. But I really think that, like, yeah, they have got to look at their past and go, okay, we need to do what we did with MK9. We need to start listening. Actually, you know what? They don't need to listen to a single soul. They just need to, and I said this before, they just need to look at their past. That's it. Because they did that with MK9, and MK9 was a banger. Because MK9 was basically like, yep, we are absolutely remembering what made MK great, but we're giving you a fresh lick of paint for it. And it was absolutely nigh on perfect.
That making a product that is worth the people's time is important for the publisher more than the developer. And I don't think they see that. They see numbers, they see trends, they see they see the quarterly they see the quarterly figures that allows them to keep the boat running. But if they don't see a work of art, then they won't pay too much attention to it, and will just try to shelve you trash just because it has a brilliant, or just because it has a well-known title. The only dev I think that can really get away with telling the publisher, like, hey, you're gonna give me time to do this, is like Kojima or something, right? Like, those are the guys, they'd be like, no, I make art. You will wait until I decide to release said product, and then you will make your money. But I'm releasing art, and you'll wait. This isn't NetherRealm. They can't do that. If NetherRealm takes another hit, that could be the end of the company, for real. I think they'll be fine after this, but I think if they take another hit, it could be really bad for them. So I think if they are allowed to flesh out the ideas that they want to for an MK2,
Please don't call it MK2. They never should have called it MK1, and I said this before, and now we have people doing the same thing. Oh, what will MK2 be? Nah, it's just Mortal Kombat 13. Right? This is MK12. Now we'll look forward to MK13. Right? Please don't call it MK2. I am so sick and tired of Warner Brothers and NetherRealm disrespecting their past like this.
it's gonna be a while. It needs to be a while. It needs to be. I can't say if it is or not, but it has to be. That's the only way they're gonna make a story of that. I don't even know where they go from here. Where do you go from Chaos Expansion? Like, that story, I don't know what was going on there, and like, you don't even really care about the characters at that point. So how do you flesh it out in a way where you can still salvage some sort of story that we actually care? And I don't know. Go back to the OG timeline. I don't even think that would work.
Yeah, it can work.
Yes, there you
100%.
go,
It can
Kyle.
work.
I think Onaga, in some way, shape, or form, would work. Again.
Yep. Hang on. Wait. I want to see what he says.
You have not just world-destroying antagonists. You have cataclysmic, universal, timeline-destroying
Say it. Say it.
antagonists.
Yes. Say it.
That were already
Yes.
the final boss
Come on.
of the previous Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
Where do
Almost
you
there.
go from there?
Come on. Come on.
Like, Onaga is, yeah, he's kind of cool as a villain, but Kronika destroyed reality. Like,
Listen. That Chronic Itch character, right? Can't stand her. It was like, that's just stupid. You know, somebody had a twink fetish, and NetherRealm decided to stick her in there, right? The reason why people get excited about Onaga is because we really need. I know it sounds really strange, but we really need Onaga. Like, hashtag, Onaga save us, right? The reason why we need Onaga, and me and Total MK have talked about this, this is how you fix it. This is how you fix it, right? You start off the next Mortal Kombat game, right? After the NetherRealm has completely consulted myself and Total MK on how to actually do a proper Mortal Kombat game, free of charge, by the way, or at least on my end, right? We'll fix it. Don't worry, we got you, bro. Anyway, that's a joke for those that don't understand humor. Okay. How you fix it is that you have Onaga smashing out of his prison, like the temple or the pyramid or some shit, right? This is the opening, right? And he is just roll stomping. He's just fucking just laying waste to everyone. Just absolutely just murdering left and right, burning everything to the ground. Think of Deathwing. No, the World of Warcraft players out there, go watch the trailer, right? Go watch the trailer. It's a World of Warcraft trailer, right? And it's the Deathwing. They have these dragon aspects, right? What happens is that this massive like dragon aspect of the black dragonfly, when he's coming out of essentially where he's been underground, it's causing like earthquakes, tsunamis, entire lands to be split apart. And if you look up the trailer for Cataclysm, right, and you apply that same sort of type of logic of Deathwing and the destruction that he does, and you do that with Onaga, that's how you start off the next Mortal Kombat game. I'm getting chills thinking about this. I got fucking hair standing up. I would cinema, right? So what happens is that like Onaga is just like he is literally annihilating this stupid ass gay timeline that Liu Kang has put out. Right? Them and their little Prince of Persia shoes, gone. Right? He's coming for the Kamidogu. He grabs the Kamidogu. Now, the Kamidogu were created in the original timeline. Right? And this is what me and Total MK were theorizing as a cool story. So when he grabs them and he goes to activate them, because he's the only one that can truly activate them, as far as I'm concerned, or at least use them properly. What happens is that something goes wrong by being activated in a in the timeline that was not of their origin. It caused a universal collapse, and it collapses all the way back to the original timeline. Not only that, it collapses all the way back to when those Kamidogu were created. Now, I'd have to check, for the MK lore nerds out there, please tell me in the chat. The reason why you would have that is because then if it's back far enough, we might actually be able to get a Mortal Kombat game that actually gives us the reason why we get the creation of the first tournament, seeing the Great Kung Lao become the Great Kung Lao, and seeing things like the formation of the original, like the original origin story for the Lin Kuei, things like that. And it's set in the past, so there's no guns, there's no cars, there's no planes. It is literally set in the past with a whole host of brand new fighters that you could introduce, some of which have already been created in the comics that came out in the 90s. Okay. You give it the same art style of those comics, or what I would consider the John Tobias look, right? His artwork, you make that the in-game aesthetic, which means that the stylized look, as I was talking about with someone yesterday on the stream, I think it was Gingerman that said it, that stylized look can last forever because it's not based on like actual realistic graphics. So the storyline collapses all the way back and it wipes out everything. And unfortunately, it would also wipe out MK9 storyline, but it takes us all the way back. And if I was to do a true sequel to Mortal Kombat, I would probably, I'm kind of stuck between, you know, the sequel from doing it after MK Trilogy, or aka the MK3 storyline, and people go, but we've got MK4, right? But because I wasn't a big fan of Shinnok, that's why I say that. But if we had to do a sequel after MK4 with Shinnok, I absolutely would be going into Onaga as like the guy, right? I would be forgetting the 3D era to a degree. At least initially, because you could, if you wanted to, have Onaga sort of like, you could do like a prequel sequel. You could put something in between MK4 and Deadly Alliance, something that might fill in a gap there if it's possible. But the good thing about having a prequel game going all the way back to the original timeline is we also get to see the original ruler of Outworld, Onaga the Dragon King. And that would be insane. That would be so fucking cool, man. Right? And I'm really glad this dude said it. He knows what's up. He knows the business end of the stick.
Oh, I don't know how that's gonna fit. I don't know how that works. So, will I still be playing Mortal Kombat? Yeah, of course. The game is still fun, for the most part, but probably not as much as I used to, just because there's nothing to anticipate anymore. But to go back and learn some fun new combos and some new characters and stuff, sure, why not? Like, that's the whole point of owning a game anyway, is that I can go back and play it anytime I want and still enjoy the game for what it is. So until then, we'll see how it turns.
So shout out to Infinite. It was great to be able to cover your video. Good points, you know, and I'll post a link in the description for everyone to go check it out and share your thoughts on it. And yes, I will catch you guys next time. See you.